It's another heat wave in the Northeast. And in New York City, we're being warned about conserving energy for the electrical grid. You know, honestly, I'm just really tired of this constant blaming of regular people as if we could possibly do anything to stop any of this on our own. And there's a long tradition of this with big corporations desperately needing to pass on responsibility so that we don't ever wake up and hold them accountable for their bullshit. Con Edison came out publicly to ask the whole city to try not to use a lot of energy at the exact moment when we need to, which again feels a lot like being chastised in advance for something we independently just have no control over. So who does have control over this, and what can be done about it? What's going to stop these heat waves, and what's going to stop giant corporations and government authorities from blaming regular people for using electricity for their air conditioners so that they won't die? I'm Kevin Lankus, and I'm just goo at this point. I'm just human goo. I'm actually melting in front of your eyes, and I don't know if I'll be conscious by the end of this video because of the impending heat stroke, but if that happens, then someone please just come by and hit the upload button. Thanks. Down in the didgeridoodles, I've put some links you can read through to learn how to increase the efficiency of air conditioning during heat waves and other strategies that could help you. But long story short, you shouldn't have to. Because here's the rub. Air conditioning accounts for just 7% of electricity use in the entire world, and just 3% of carbon emissions. Here in the city, large buildings are the biggest energy hogs, but that's kind of a bit misleading. Because again, everyday people are just doing what they need to do to live, and they can't really affect change in any of the areas where that energy use is really coming from. And there are lots of ways to stop heat waves like this from actually happening, and none of them have anything to do with you or me. They do not involve effort on our parts. What we can do ourselves is just so stupidly trivial, so completely negligible compared to other systemic solutions that it's just not even funny. As someone on Reddit just eloquently pointed out to Con Edison, quote, "You have one job." And I'm assuming the unsaid part of that statement is that their job is to give us electricity and not, like, I don't know, make frozen margaritas, which honestly might also help right now. But what is so hard about this? Because right now it's 99 degrees out and it feels like 101, and it's only getting hotter throughout the day. Today, June 24th, might end up being the hottest day in a decade. Con Edison is so serious about getting their customers to stop using their product that they're reducing voltage in certain neighborhoods so that you just can't use it. New York declared a state of emergency in preparation for the heat wave, so why can't we have electricity? Because without proper air conditioning, people are definitely going to die. Extreme heat kills more people than any other weather-related cause of death. Death by heat claims just under 500,000 people each year, and the elderly are the most vulnerable. And because heat waves are getting hotter and climate change is driving all this, there's been an 85% increase in mortality from heat-related causes in people over 65 from 2000 to 2004 and 2017 to 2021. The Trump administration is also considering blocking the first national heat protections for outdoor workers, so more people who can't help it are going to die through absolutely no fault of their own, other than just, wanting a salary and being able to eat food. Those people just shouldn't be doing that. Food is for the shareholders. One viral term that everyone is talking about these days that no one knew at all before we started having these heat waves is something called wet bulb temperature. This is going viral because it's pretty important to keep track of now, and it determines whether or not we might die in the heat. Now, normal human physiology is designed so that people sweat to cool off. That's the body's natural defense against the heat. The sweat takes some of the heat from the body and evaporates into the air, and it takes the heat along with it. But the air can only hold so much water. So at 100% humidity, there's no more evaporating sweat because the air just won't hold it. If the temperature is too high and there's no breeze or air conditioning or any other external way to cool off, then you could start to suffer heat stroke and possibly die. In 2023, researchers from Penn State University found that people could only tolerate 100% humidity at 88 degrees Fahrenheit, which is lower than previously thought. This is why the supposed supply and demand of American capitalism gets in the way of reality and how life really works. Increased energy use translates to limited supply, which makes the electricity rates skyrocket for regular people like you and me, and others who need it even more than we do, and they can't afford to pay higher rates, but they also don't want to die. Capitalism is not a human system, especially when it comes to public health and safety. Prices are going through the roof around the country in this heat. But there's also a massive difference in cost depending on where you are. In Pennsylvania, for instance, PJM Interconnection, which serves 1 in 5 Americans their electricity, said that rates are up 430% to $211 per megawatt. But here in NYC, prices are hitting $600 per megawatt. Just to give you a baseline, on an average day, 1 megawatt can power 800 homes, but not now. In conditions like this, that number falls drastically while everyone cranks up their ACs, which again, they need to do. This is not the time to blame regular people who just want to live. And because of the demands on the grid, many thousands of people in New York City were without power for at least a day or two during the start of this thing, and now it's just a couple of households, fortunately, according to the updates that I've seen. Something like 6,200 homes and businesses didn't have electricity at all. And that meant that those people had to rely on traveling to public cooling centers in order to potentially survive. And guess what? The transit infrastructure uses a lot of electricity, and certain subway stations are actual death traps during extreme heat events. Here in NYC and other major cities, we also have to deal with something called the urban heat island effect, which means that temperatures are up to 7 degrees hotter than the surrounding areas because of all the buildings and the roads. And they slowly just release thermal energy overnight, so we don't even get as much of the cooling effect that most of the world sees later in the day when the sun goes down. And when we look at a breakdown of the data, we can see that big buildings here use a lot of energy. But we can break that down further and understand why they use a lot of energy and what could possibly change that situation for the better. For example, steam heat distribution is still the most common mode of heating buildings in New York City. This is a technology developed in the 1780s. I mean, this is the equivalent of just going outside and pooping in a hole for your plumbing system. We have much more advanced heating options nowadays that are way more efficient, but what we do not have is the political will or the budget allocation to switch to those en masse. And then adding to that, a lot of the buildings in New York City are kind of in trouble. The average age of buildings in New York City is about 100, and we have a bunch that were built in the early 1800s. They're collapsing in various ways, they're infested with various things, and they're all leaky as hell. We know this because the law requires reporting on this stuff, so we can see how energy efficient buildings are in the city. When a Bronx building collapsed last year, the resulting lawsuit found 133 violations dating back 5 years, and they involved things like illegal partitioning of units, crumbling ceilings, and broken windows. All of this, of course, contributes to energy efficiency or a lack thereof. And yes, solutions are coming. New York State specifically is getting better. We're currently 3rd out of all US states in renewable energy production, and we emit less carbon dioxide than almost every other state too. The majority of electricity in New York City does come from natural gas still, but after that, it's hydroelectric power and nuclear power, both around the low 20-ish%, with other renewable sources to even out the bottom, and a small percentage of biomass, and then some oil-fired electric power. But the real solutions are going to have to be systemic. I can't independently go out and decide where my energy comes from. I tried to use one of those companies that ships electricity from renewable sources elsewhere in the country through your providers so that you can feel morally good about yourself, but that shit is expensive. Installing solar panels, digging up your own geothermal thingamajigs. I mean, these are great solutions, but they're simply impractical for the vast majority of people here, either because of their cost or simply the logistics involved. I don't have a roof on my apartment or an underground to dig into. I can't just build my own green roof on the building I live in, even though that would help a lot with heat and cooling, and also with climate change and these worsening heat waves. We have 40,000 acres of roof in this city, and they're just sucking up the heat and then radiating it back out. There are recent laws that require new construction to build in green roofs or solar panels, but of course, there are tons of exceptions to those rules. So until we get 100% buy-in, including retrofitting, and we get programs where the city does this for us and covers the cost, then we're not gonna really make a dent in the problem. And we need to demand that the so-called adults in the room focus on these issues, because the city, the state, the country, the world leadership has a giant vested interest in protecting public health. From a capitalist standpoint, you could argue that businesses should be all over this because they should want to keep their customers alive. Politicians are probably going to be a little upset when all their voters die off too. Importantly and damningly, NYC is an energy anomaly. We have too many people, and that means big buildings full of bodies that are using a lot of energy. But in the rest of the country, that's not the case. The biggest consumer of electricity in America overall is the industrial sector. We're talking things like manufacturing, mining, and industrial farming. The biggest culprits within that are the fossil fuel industry, paper manufacturing, food production, metalworking, and chemical production, which ranks number 1. 15% of the world's chemicals are made inside the US and exported elsewhere. Now, if you guys have watched like one single video I've ever done, then you know I'm not the most corporate-friendly doodles. I think I'm probably not a fan really at all, honestly, especially when we know, like, for instance, they use the most energy, and then Con Edison comes out and tells us to stop using our air conditioners in a heat wave. And I'm just like, there are so many systemic ways to get us out of this madness, but they'd cost money, and there's just no way that companies are gonna front the costs for that. They barely put up the money for their own operating costs, and they rely on government subsidies for the basic operations they're supposed to perform, because lest we forget, corporations are the actual real-life welfare queens. And there's a whole history of deliberate marketing campaigns crafted by the same people for industry after industry in order to shift the blame from them to us. This happened with the environment in the 60s and 70s. That's where the term carbon footprint came from, when British Petroleum wanted to find a way to make regular people feel guilty instead of taking responsibility for the data the researchers of the company were finding out about the devastation of climate change. And that really worked, because it's still a term we use today to make each other feel bad about not turning the lights off when we leave the room, when that does absolutely nothing compared to the energy use of gigantic corporations. It happened again with the military-industrial complex and the defense industry that uses so much energy across the world. And these people started spreading their propaganda against science when the tobacco industry paid them to way back in the 1950s. If you want to learn more about that, you can read all about it in the book Merchants of Doubt, which is fantastic, and there's also a movie adaptation, so you can just stream that if you want. I am despaired. I am so despaired, because I don't know what it will take to get buy-in from the top down, because that's what we need. We don't need Greta Thunberg yelling at the UN and having them all applaud, all performatively, even though this is like their fault, and she's like yelling at them. I don't know. We don't really need that. To clarify, we need Greta and the work that she does, but she shouldn't have to be doing it. It should be the people that she was yelling at that fix the problems. And I mean, if we don't fix this, then the Earth is going to become uninhabitable, and we're going to have to trust this idiot to get us to Mars, which is in reality an inhospitable murder landscape that we just can't survive in, and it's just never going to not be that. But the Earth is about to be that too. So I don't know if you know this, but we will then be gone. Personally, I was planning on making it all the way to the inevitable heat death of the universe, but if we can't make it past the point of self-destructing our own home, then I guess we definitely don't deserve to see what else is out there. Because we'll probably just shit all over that too. But try not to all the way lose your minds. I mean, we still kind of somewhat live in a democracy, more in our local politics than our national politics now, but people can still vote. And we can still vote more people in who want to initiate real solutions. I just voted for Paperboy Love Prince in the NYC mayoral election, for example, and if you haven't voted and you're in NYC, then you need to do that today. We have ranked choice voting here, and I put him number 5. I'm not crazy. Yeah, I actually do feel like he'd be way better than our current solidly corrupt political hellscape at fixing the existential problems of our time. But until we can get big money out of politics and make political life a public service again, I guess you're just gonna have to not use your air conditioner while Trump gives more tax breaks to giant corporations and CEOs. Cool. So let's be good to each other until we can make this right. Let's do some f***ing good wherever we personally can right now and help whoever needs it in whatever way they need if it's within our ability to do so. We really need to stick together in situations like this until we can force the people who can actually fix it to do so. But don't stick too much, because in this heat you might actually fuse together and become a meat popsicle. See you in the next one.